Mike's been muted. Mike's been muted. Gracious. Okay. All right. Mike's been muted. Let's. Gracious. Okay. I'll have to make a note of that. Right. Okay. About 3. Where can you be? Oh, I need something to write notes for me. There we go. All right. I'll have to make a little edit or whatever for it. So, mystery solved. 3.5 minutes in. Gotta love it. Okay, I thought I left it on because I just recorded something a little bit ago, but evidently I did not. That's why I should check those things. Oh boy, at least I checked instead of just read it and been completely silent and then realize after the fact. That would have been slightly more embarrassing. So, but I hope everybody's doing well. Apologies again, I have to do this on another Sunday. I had to work yesterday, so kind of made it a little difficult to do a recording when you're working. Just a smidgen. So, alright. I don't know if there's anything I wish to say. Oh, I guess just the quick recap. They are in Walleran, which, let me bring up the image. I think it's this one. It doesn't help when I don't have... Nope, that is not that one. Where, oh where can you be? Oh where can you be? It's this one. Where is it at? Okay. I'll have to re-upload it or something. I must have moved it and not. Oh boy. What am I doing? How do I do this? Alright, there we are. Boom, boom. Kapow. Look at it. Alright, there we go. So, yeah, currently the party is in Walleran. And that is where we've been. So, now we are going to be reading. And let's see. Well, chapters 18 and 19 is the aim for today. It's going to be a little bit shorter. But that's because chapter 20 is fairly lengthy. And in fact, it might just be chapter 20 next week. Because it's a longer one compared to the others. So, yes. That's why I only have one biscotti today. Only one. Tragically. So, alright. But yeah, they're in Walleran. Jaharl just performed for some people at a little inn/tavern, and it went pretty well. So, or went seemingly pretty well. And that is where we're at now. So, chapter 18, Into the Thick of Things. And this is a complete nod toward Secret of Mana, because Hiruki Kikuta has a song. I think it might actually be called Into the Thick of Things. Has a song, a song on that. I like the phrasing of it. Yeah. The following morning, the group awoke from their dreams and groggily gathered their belongings. As a result of the profitable evening's entertainment for Fanoa and her family, the group was provided a bucket to carry the food they had purchased yesterday. Once they were finished packing, the four stepped downstairs, curious to see if anyone had remained to drink, and welcomed the morning in a drunken haze. On the ground floor, a few people huddled together at one table, still playing cards, oblivious to the world around them. At the bar, Gamble busied himself with cooking and some quick bouts of cleaning. Beyond them, no one else from last night's entertainment remained. Eggs sizzled on a pan as chopped potatoes, onions, leeks, and diced garlic browned in another. The meandering aroma woke the dormant hunger in the four. I hope some of that is for us. Amelia took a seat at the counter before anyone else had a chance to sit down. Her stomach grumbled in agreement. You're in luck. I've been making plenty of breakfast meals or late dinner snacks, depending on who you asked. Gamble entered the storeroom behind the bar, came back with his arms full of more ingredients and 4 round loaves of bread. That is a good thing, then. Josephine peeped around the room from her chair. She flashed a look of disappointment, crossed with curiosity. Doesn't seem like Ripson's here, huh? Ah, you just missed him. The innkeeper stirred the cooking vegetables. Then he started to chop up the food he had gathered. He'll be back in before long. Well, that's good. She turned to her husband, who only gave a slow nod, content to know their newly acquainted monk friend had not abandoned them. Content to know that her newly acquainted monk friend had not abandoned them, she turned her focus on Gamble as he went about his tasks. The innkeeper sliced off the tops of the bread and used a spoon to smash their insides. He placed somewhat uneven portions of cooked breakfast in them. One remained empty, but he passed the other 3 to his guests at the counter to divide amongst themselves. Dieter quickly declined and motioned to the others to go on and eat before him. Not in any mood to argue, the 2 Mahrians wolfed down their meals. His wife ate hers at a deliberate pace, savoring each bite. By the time he received his portion, Ripson returned to the inn with the same stoic look chiseled into his features he had yesterday when he had left them to tend to whatever dire task needed his attention. Glad to see you're all awake. I had hopes of leaving by daybreak. The monk moved toward the bar. I'm gonna do that. Toward the bar, but instead of sitting down, he leaned against the counter. Didn't realize we were set on your schedule. Demelia ignored the glare shot in her direction. We'll be ready to leave once we're finished eating and spoken with Finoa. Josephine took another bite of her food, smiling over the wonderful taste of her meal. The old woman glanced around the room again, wondering if her words might summon her. Oh, the wife's out running errands, but she did tell me about your agreement. I'll pass it to you when you're ready to leave. Gamble, content with the amount he cooked, set the food off to the side and continued to do some arranging of his utensils as it cooled. He went over to the card players and set the cooled pan on a folded piece of fabric on the table, nodding silently to the players before heading back to the bar. He returned and nibbled on some leftover bread as Dieter was finishing his meal. Couldn't have timed that much better, yeah? I want to do something here. Make a note. Ripson snorted. No small wonder you're as round as you are tall. You'd be too if you were as good a cook over there at that. You'd be it too if you had as good a cook over there at that monastery of yours. Gamble patted his belly proudly and belted out a jovial laugh. But enough of that. Y'all heading out now, yeah? You're all looking like you're itching to leave. Yes, we should be heading to Philodne as quickly as we can. The old man stood up, followed by the others. Speaking for myself and my wife, thank you for the delicious meal. Anytime, good people know good food, and you are welcome to stay whenever you're passing back through here. He turned to the Mahrians. All right, so Jahara, was it? The young man turned to the innkeeper. I am. Here. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Here. Gamble produced a pouch from under the counter and tossed it to the budding performer. That should get you to the capital without too many issues. And I know you told Finoa last night that you found out where your friends had stayed, but I took a look through our books to see if they'd come back through, and you somehow might have missed each other. I didn't see anything, though. Oh, Thank you. I appreciate it. Jarl shook the satchel. Yes, thank you, Tamila added before whispering for her friend to check the pouch's contents later. Gamble chuckled at the two youths. If they do come back here, but you aren't around, I'll keep them here for a little bit to see if you can catch up. I'll also tell the other innkeepers to do the same. Much appreciated. Charles stowed the pouch with his belongings. Yes, thank you. Tamila elbowed her friend in the side. But before I get, you might want to give that one hermit a visit. Oh, what's her name? She's good at finding things. I know you've heard of her before, Ripson. The monk crossed his arms. Are you referring to Eovir? The innkeeper clapped his hands hard at hearing that name. That's it, Eovir. She may be able to help. She's a little strange, but I've never heard someone say she's incapable. Thank you for the suggestion. Ripson nodded. I'd like to thank you for the suggestion as well. I'm going to switch that. I'd like to thank you for the suggestion as well. Jahar turned to Okay, Jarl turned to head out when another thought dawned on him. Oh, but if we don't show up and they've been here for a few days, please tell them to get home quick. They've caused enough trouble. After chewing another morsel of bread, Gamble nodded. Frustrating to wait for the blessing, but there is no other way. You're doing the smart thing by doing your own traveling and doing some traveling of your own in the meantime. Better to be busy doing something other than waiting. Dieter gestured in agreement. Truly, to do nothing is the quickest route to finding yourself on the slow path. Isn't that the truth? The owner reflected for a moment on his own life choices before focusing on the aspiring entertainer. And I'd say the same, young man. Thank you. May Saedra keep you safe. And the offer too is extended to your friends. And the offer too is extended to your if I could read. May Saedra keep you safe. And the offer too is extended to your two friends as well. Come back anytime and play some more. The group thanked Gamble one more time before gathering their things and stepping outside onto the main street of Walleran. Much like the previous day, people went about their business, and if they had none to attend to, they lounged about and laughed with whomever would listen. The smells of the town were much the same, if a little less pronounced as they were yesterday. Equally as weak, the sunny weather continued its false promise of warmth. The trek to the western gate did not take very long. The guards, more focused on keeping dangers out than letting people leave, lazily motioned the party to pass through, wishing them safe travels with a sharp salute. I don't know how sharp that would be. Then, in an instant, everything changed. Like stepping into an entirely new world. The forest with its myriad of warm colors swept away the odor of civilization. Most visitors to Walleran were farmers who ventured eastward back to their farms, or loggers who lived to the north and south, so they had little reason to head west unless they needed to travel to Flodnay, or the capital. As the last of the stone road transitioned into a rather wide dirt one, the noises of Walleran were replaced by the rustling of the branches dressed with leaves swaying lethargically. The sounds of the forest carried on with its own rhythm, ignoring the mark of civilization directly at its doorstep. In contemplative silence, the group walked for some time, draped in such serenity. Some time passed before they noticed the road gradually veered to the south. The young Mahrians led the charge, chatting about different types of trees and openly wondering how plain the sap in this area must taste for Mahri's syrup to taste so much better. The elderly farmers followed after the younger pair, engaged in their own quiet conversation. The monk lagged behind and ultimately came to a stop. The old couple realized the monk was no longer trailing the group and called for the younger pair to come back. The four regrouped with their slow-paced friend, who openly displayed his interest elsewhere, deeper into the forest. Everything all right? Josephine leaned closer to see if she could pull a more concrete meaning from his features, but the monk drew back at her approach. I believe our ways will part here for now. I will make an effort to meet you all in Philodne. Ripson dodged around their group and walked toward the small opening leading into the northern portion of the forest. Whoa, hold on. Jamelia rushed ahead of the monk and planted herself squarely between him and the trees. Yeah, not sure what you're thinking, but running off into the forest doesn't sound like a bright idea. Jarl joined his friend's side. It is a foolish idea to run off like this. What are you thinking? Dieter positioned himself behind the monk. Ripson instinctively reached for his club, but stopped and let his hand fall to his side. It's not something I want good people to be involved with. Stand aside. Jamelia braced herself for whatever the brutish monk was planning. Not happening. Involved with what? Dieter looped around to receive his answer face to face. Ripson's shoulders slumped slightly. If you must know, there's an old shrine buried in these woods. It's not too much of a detour, but the shrine was once dedicated to Atuma. It has been neglected for some time, and I would like to see its current state. The older farmer scratched at his beard. That doesn't sound too bad. You're making it sound like you were planning on hunting down a pack of wolves or something. It's not quite an easy stroll, and we still have to camp in the forest. The monk peered into the eyes of the trio in front of him, his gaze unmoving and rigid. Lots of dangers lurking, Folial. I would rather not drag you all into it. I can't really say I like that idea. Jarl flexed his gloved fingers and glanced in Dieter's direction. Who knows what sort of horrible creatures could come out at night in there? What, you think the Argia are going to get you here? Amelia made a goofy grin while widening her stance before shooting her arms toward her friend. He parried one of her arms away with a slap. No, there could be a pack of wolves or something worse. I'm going to change that a little bit. Bloop. The Argia. The farmer frowned as he looked to his wife, as well as the monk for a possible answer. Yeah, both shook their heads for her in response. She laughed while rubbing her forearm. Oh, it's basically something told to kids in our village to make them behave. Is it like a snake? Ripson tapped his temple in contemplation. The young man looked at his friend, who continued to rub her arm. No, not at all. Why? Walleran has its own little tale like that. It ties in with an old story about Violin and Henrik. Are you familiar with it? Jamelia stared past the monk for a moment before providing an answer. Sounds like something my grandmother has told us, but I don't remember any details about them. How about you, Jarl? The young man rubbed the back of his neck. I don't recall too much, but I think Henrik stole Violin's pet owl, right? She responded with a shrug. Ripson's stature tightened as he let out a sharp cough. You have the general idea, Jarl. I can tell the full tale later, but there is said to be a great snake in the tale, the Nair. In Walleran, they tell their children the Nair lives here in the Folial Forest. Jarl pivoted and stumbled a few steps backwards, nearly colliding with the monk. Wait, that giant snake lives there? The monk frowned. Don't be so gullible. I've never seen anything like that, and there'd be a lot of evidence for it if it did. His frame slackened at the retort. Oh. Jamelia giggled before curling her top lip while jutting out her jaw. Something like... I can't do... Kind of like that. Even giving a cross look, kind of. That's about as good as it. See, definitely afraid the RG are gonna snatch you. Not at all. Prove it. Fine, I will. Jarl turned to Ripson. Lead the way. I don't care if it takes till spring. Let's go. Glad to hear you're deciding for everyone, young man. Dieter smiled wryly. No, it's fine. I'd like to pay homage to the shrine reclaimed by nature. But what about the road? Josephine glanced to the west, eyeing the path as far as she could before it disappeared around the bend. It could possibly miss running into your friends. Wouldn't that be a cause for concern? Honestly, Tamila shifted her weight from one foot to the other. I think they're still in Perail Castletown, or even further south in Rowan. Vanine has always wanted to visit a capital in the larger cities of Perail, and Hardren wouldn't want to disappoint her. Plus, with winter coming soon, I can see how they would want to wait to head back home, Jaharl added. If anything, we can use some of the money we earned in Walleran to hire a runner to send a message to Fanoa and Gamel. You two seem awfully okay with this. Ripson clenched his fists as he crossed his arms. But I guess you did tell Gamel to send them back home. Well, I'm not about to have her think I'm some child scared of stories from when we were younger. Jarl cast an indignant look toward his friend. And I feel like Tamilia is right. They probably are enjoying their time in the capital. Wouldn't surprise me at all. And if we find out they've stayed twice in Flodnay, we'll know we just missed them. All right. Then it sounds like we have a plan. Josephine motioned for the group to gather at the edge of the northern portion of the forest, where she positioned herself. Let's see the shrine that has been neglected by people and nurtured by nature. Okay. A rug of fallen leaves and browning moss and grass covered the soil, cushioning each step. Those fallen leaves crunched loudly under the weight of the travelers. Trees clustered together, their branches stretching out, reaching toward other clusters. Daylight poured through the gaps, illuminating the forest as far as they could see. Ripson led the rest on a narrow dirt trail that only seemed to reveal itself when they sought for it long enough. Over small hills, where trees leaned inward and the light echoed past, they ventured forward with a singular focus. Birds chirped energetically before flying off elsewhere to avoid the noisy intruders. At times, a loud crack broke through the air, causing the group to stop in their journey and wait until they felt comfortable to journey once more. Skipping a midday meal, they forged ahead. Each step became a little heavier, slightly more beleaguered. Beams of daylight slowly weakened into fading gleams, and more shadows crept throughout the body of the forest. As the world around them gradually darkened, they hastened their pace. Before long, they arrived at a small hill, taller than the ones surrounding it, naked of trees, but at its peak, a decrepit shamble of a box-shaped stone structure leered at the land below it. Wiry vines clutched tightly at the shrine, wrapping around its frame. The building's size housed only a single room, which could be somewhat seen through a large opening, like a toothless mouth left agape, and unable to close without taking the whole building with it. On the top of the shrine, a broken statue perched mournfully, offering only more emptiness to the dilapidated display. While the four sat about gathering wood, clearing an area for camp, and doing other preparations for the night, Ripson climbed the incline to thoroughly inspect the shrine. Nearing the structure did not reveal anything different than what he saw at the base of the hill. He wandered around the crumbling building, taking note of the weathered damage countless years had delivered to this unkept place. After circling around, the monk peeked inside. The room, tiny as it was, housed a variety of dismantled and decayed pieces of wood scattered throughout. When he tried to enter, the room only allowed for a few steps of movement before it closed itself off with chaotic natural growth. If there were any remnants of offerings or prayers to Atumu, the shrine and nature concealed them well. After contemplating his inspection, he rejoined the group and helped set up the tents. By the time they had finished their tasks, twilight seeped into the sky above, and the wind faded away. I cannot believe you spent so much on vegetables and some crusty pies. Ripson's eyes deadened as he weighed his very light coin pouch. You two need to learn how to handle money better. Hey, some of that went to innkeepers so we could find out if our friends had stayed there or not. Amelia passed the bucket of vegetables to Josephine, who to add to the broth she was making. The monk angrily tossed his pouch onto the small pile of his other belongings. I think I'd rather have been told you'd spent it all on gathering information or lost it or had it stolen. Something other than spending it so freely. She pointed wildly at her friend. See, I told you we should have said that. Ripson's eyes narrowed at the young pair. Whatever. We got plenty from Fanoa and Gamble. We'll take better care of it next time. I don't see what the big deal is. Jaharl continued, helping Dieter add wood to the fire. The monk snorted. It's worrying to see how careless the two of you are. Money may not be needed in Mahri, but it'd be like fishing without a net or a rod if you went anywhere else in Perel. It might be doable, but you'd have a tough time without money unless you're lucky, very talented, or a good deal of both. I guess that's what my loot's for, huh? Jaharl smirked and gestured toward his instrument and its case. Ripson cocked his head to one side and crowed. Fool. Is that your plan? Get lucky and hope someone notices you before someone else takes advantage of you and your foolishness? Atumu, help guide these two mountainside sprouts. You're getting awfully worked up over this. Tamelia moved closer to the fire and stretched out her arms, palms open, as close to the flames as she felt comfortable with doing. The monk crossed his arms. It's concerning is all. Then let us do the concerning, the young woman shot back. What do our spending habits have to do with you? Help others help themselves. Ripson gestured to the pair of Mahrians. Even if it is up to yourselves, I can't simply watch you two piss away money like you're trying to water a flower. Oh, I like that line. Josephine laughed loudly. I am Josephine. As she expertly dumped the remaining prepared food into the pot she had bought in Walleran without spilling onto the ground. It looks like he's got you two there. As she finished speaking, the cracking of branches sounded off to their west. With their widening eyes alert, they all silently signaled to each other to remain quiet as they stealthily moved to grab their weapons. Dieter was the first to grab his and carefully walked in the direction of the noise. Soon enough, he was flanked on both sides by Jaharl, Ripson, and Tamelia, while his wife remained by the fire with an arrow nocked and ready to sing through the air toward any dangerous target. The old farmer motioned for the others to fan out a little farther. Once he was content with their distance, he approached a group of trees where barren brushes hugged the trunks. He steadied his breathing and counted in his mind, not necessarily seeking a particular number. Then, like an eagle striking at its prey, the farmer darted around the trees, only to find nothing but some broken branches. He picked up one of the branches and flung it deeper into the woods. Might have been some hungry scavenger smelling our dinner, looking to mooch some food off of us. Oh, that's a relief. Jaharl lowered his spear and returned with his friend to the fire's side. Ripson joined Dieter by the trees. Though not a surprise, looks like we ought to keep a keen guard tonight. Agreed. The farmer nodded as he lightly tugged on his beard. Agreed. Is this why you were worried about us joining you here? The monk inhaled and exhaled a long, deep breath. Yes, to some extent. I see. Dieter peered off into the wilderness. We ought to be all right. The young ones may have a strange combination, but they're not entirely stupid when it comes to this sort of thing. I hope as much. They both kept watch by themselves the night before we arrived at your monastery. Is that so? Truly. I see. Ripson gripped his club tightly. They may be out of their depth with the town life and strangers, but I guess dealing with the outdoors is more of their specialty. At least with Tamilia. The other one, though, he makes me worry all around. Jarl is not as forthcoming as his friend. He tends to hold back, but I wager, given enough time and the proper situations, he'll learn to grow into his own. Well, I hope it's before he grows old. Life's weary burdens wreck the heart, and without a proper path to walk, he'll be trying to move like a boulder down a tiny stream. That is life. Sooner or later, that boulder will break, and he'll be forced to move forward to collect the pieces on the way down. A short, solemn bow, and the monk's only response as the two returned to camp. Night settled in, while darkness cloaked the outer edges of the fire's illumination. The vegetable soup Josephine prepared was passed out to everyone, and they ate, listening for any new sounds of potential danger. Eventually, they saved about half of the remaining soup for tomorrow and huddled together to quietly discuss the rotation for the night watch. Before anyone could get in a word, a series of approaching noises broke the quiet, growing louder and louder as it neared. The group hastily armed themselves and braced for the danger, facing away from the flames. Then, as quickly as the sounds started, they ceased. Moments passed. The breathing slowed as their vision tried to pierce the veil of night. Suddenly, a boy looking younger than Jahar and Amelia came rushing out of the forest and into the opening toward the camp. Tattered clothing clung to his body. His face made no effort to hide bruises and scars. Dried blood speckled his appearance. In the stranger's hand, he clasped a fine rapier that he dropped at the sight of the five. Through blonde curls of hair, his dark eyes drank in the light of the campfire, pleading for protection. Bum, 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 bum. The end of chapter 18. Okay, so let's see here. In the Thesaurus, chapter 18, there are two entries. 1. The Nair, mythic creature, a great snake the size of 2 great oak trees stacked on top of each other, said to have roamed the lands near Walleran for eons. Bit the hero Henrik after he had stolen Violin's pet owl, dooming him from ever returning home. And Violin and Henrik is actually a series of stories about a hero who died and tried to gamble his way back into the land of the living against the god of death, Violin. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Okay. It is time to taste of the tasty biscotti. So yeah, a little bit more interplay, similar things going on, and this is also where you start to see some of the, at least like with the less subtle problems with like Jaharl. Jaharl is a problem with not necessarily being called chicken, but being called chicken. And it's a pretty common quality to have, but I think it's fine. Because I would say there's something to being reckless, and It's good to be reckless in a contained environment, so you can learn not to be reckless outside. Well, yeah, yeah. So he's got to learn not to be so reckless. But in the same hand, Ripson would have gone without them. Been like, okay, like I'm still heading this way. And because Jarl and Tamelia aren't quite as familiar, they think, oh yeah, if Wallerin is about the same size as Philodene, which it is, it shouldn't be a problem to find, spend a couple days in Philodene, and if you can't find the information for it, everybody's been, moderately forthcoming. If not, well, we can pay for it, or we can play instruments. We can find it out that way. They will just be like, okay, we'll just do that, and then if we miss them, obviously we'll head back, but we'll send a runner to go and send the message ahead of to Gamel and stuff, and yeah, so that, like, there's at least there's a dragnet for this, because it is just this one little path. It's not like, they'll be going off into the woods and then going way up elsewhere. I mean, certainly they could go to Dolaire, or they could have gone down south to Rowan, which is what they're speculating is what's gone on. And if they were, they could take the path. Just as a heads up, the water flow goes to about here, and then it goes to about here. So that's how that works. So but at least they've got this closed off. So if worse comes to worse and they have to go up that way, okay. If they have to go down that way, okay. And once they get to here, they can be like, oh, we can at least do the swooping for it if need be. So they think they've got this. They don't realize that Samine and Perel Castletown are a lot bigger than where they have been. So, they've been told, hey, this is kind of a big place. So they've got to. They don't have a good way of conceptualizing that, right? So, outside of what they've been told. So, that's what's going on. So they are somewhere in. They're somewhere in the northern part of the folial forest, right? So, that is what that is. Yes. So, all right. Chapter 19. But yeah, I guess if anything, there's a little bit more of a dichotomy. There's a little bit more emotiveness from Ripson. Dieter's still pretty. But it's that's how that goes. So now we have chapter 19, Malam, or Malum. I say Malam because Malum doesn't sound right. Malum doesn't sound right. That sounds not Malam. I think Malam sound. Maybe I could have added in another A at the end, but I think I like the way it sounds. Malam. Yeah. So chapter 19, Malam. With a mighty swing, Ripson pointed his weapon at the distressed intruder. Who are you? Spit it out quickly, if you want to see tomorrow's light. Tamelia sheathed her sword and ran toward the disheveled boy to check on him. Hey, he's only a kid. Leave him alone, you brute. Stop, or I'll add you to that threat. The monk remained fixated on the stranger. His eyes erupted with heated intent. She moved no closer. I probably want to flip that around. Forgive my intrusion. The boy meekly stepped forward, but upon seeing the monk swing his weapon again, he froze in place. Then he whimpered a plea. Please, Help me. Answer my question. Who are you? I Josephine stepped ahead of Ripson and received a hardened stare from him for doing so. We promise. Well, I promise I won't eat you or let you come to harm. Just tell him your name. Mine's Josephine. The boy fidgeted in place as he straightened his tattered clothing. I'm Malam Dekria. I am from Samin. What are you doing here, Malam? Ripson remained where he stood, Samin is some distance away. They took me. That tears broke through the dam of his eyelids as he fell to his hands and knees, his rapier beside him. Look at what you've done, you brute. Tamelia shot a nasty look at the monk as she, along with Josephine, raced to the boy's side. They helped him to his feet, though he shivered wildly at their touch. And they also relieved him of his weapon, which took some coaxing before guiding him to the fire to sit down. Well, the monk remained intently focused on the stranger. Dieter and Jaharl kept their eyes and ears trained on the sights and sounds of the darkened forest, waiting. By the farmer's orders, the two steadily inspected around the camp in opposite directions and stopped once they reached each other. You see anything, young man? He shook his head. Nothing but darkness and the trees. Well, we'll keep this up for a few rounds. Keep your eyes clear and your weapon ready. All right. They continued their self-appointed sentry duty as the other three looked to the boy to some degree or another. Josephine reheated the soup. Tamelia tried to calmly speak to Malam, but got nothing much in return. The monk's gaze never strayed from the stranger, not even for a moment. Eventually, Tamelia placed her cloak around the shivering boy, and Josephine gave a bowl of warm food to him. His eyes jumped from the pair, helping him to the monk, to the fire, to the stars above, and back again before he sipped on the soup. Every now and again, his hands would shake so violently that he had to set the bowl down before he spilled it on himself. By the time the two returned from walking the camp's perimeter, the boy had calmed himself enough to finish what he was offered. Thank you. Malam took a deep breath before facing Ripson. I apologize for frightening you. That was not my intention. Ripson squeezed his club tightly and sneered. Not scared, little one. I'd crush you without fail. Josephine gave the monk a stern look. Don't bully the poor child. Who knows what he's been through? That's what I want to know. He tells us why he's here and how it happened, or I'll crack his head open and discover the answer myself. Malam rigidly sat up and began telling his tale rapidly at first, but slowing his pace once he became more comfortable speaking to the group. As I said before, my name is Malam, and I am the son of the Decree family in Samin. But judging from your faces, you're not familiar with the name. No matter, my family and I wanted to do some traveling, but they sent me ahead to the Great Bridge. Then I was to go to Finlandne. However, that is where trouble began. My carriage was attacked. My driver was killed, but those hideous barbarics, all kidnapped me. One barely spoke anything resembling a language I could understand. I put together that they were planning on selling me in Alteo. They had brought me to this area, but those fiends got drunk and fought with each other over how to split whatever they would have got from selling me. When that fight broke out, I escaped. I'd been running well before dusk, and when I realized I'd encountered someone other than the Saul, I had to ask for help. The boy sighed forcefully through his teeth as though the simple act of breathing became an arduous undertaking. He glanced at the different people in the group, waiting for questions to come his way. For the first time since Malam's appearance, Ripson pulled his vision away from the boy and tried to see beyond the knight's veil. Are you certain you weren't followed? If they did, they would have a very difficult time doing so for so long at night, I would think. I see. And the nice sword? The monk pointed his foot at the rapier. What's that about? certainly not something a Saul would be lugging around. Malam reached for the blade reflexively, but stopped well before he could clasp it. It has been in my family for generations. I wasn't about to leave it in the hands of those filthy Saul. Ripson turned to the boy with an eyebrow raised. Even if it would have cost you your life? Without hesitation, he answered with conviction. His words cut clearly over the cackling fire. Yes, it is far too valuable to be lost without a struggle. That's a bit extreme. I don't know if I could feel that way about my instrument. Jarl scratched behind his ear as his eyes drifted toward his loose case. We are heading that direction. To Sameen, I mean. We could help reunite you with your family. Malam leapt toward the Mahrian and clasped the young man's hands in his own. Oh, please, I would be so grateful. My family would do everything in their power to assist you in whatever you all in. Yeah, would assist you all in whatever ails you if you bring me home safely. He nimbly pulled his hands free and looked to his traveling companions to voice their thoughts on the matter. I don't know if that's necessary, but helping someone reunite with their parents is good enough reward in itself. Josephine nodded. A good reward indeed. Isn't that right, dear? It is. Dieter buried his axe into the soil near his feet. Do you have anything else you want to ask, Monk? You were all about asking questions. Only one more. How old are you? Malam's eyes locked with the monk's. I'd say a handful of seasons younger than those two. The monk did not immediately respond. The two, in silence, had a wordless debate. Then Ripson lobbed his club a short distance to the side of the fire. All right, I'll watch through the night. Get your rest. We'll leave at dawn. All night? Tamelia jumped to her feet, stretching her arms as she did. Are you missing a few bees for a full hive in that head of yours? Ripson snorted. No, I'll be fine. While I appreciate the offer, it would be ideal if two of us guard camp at night. Dieter looked to his wife for support. If you want, by all means. I'm fine, though. That's your choice. Dieter turned to the Mahrians. Jarl, you'll take the first watch. He'll be followed by Tamelia. I will be the last. Jarl motioned to say something, but bit his tongue upon further contemplation. Without any arguments or more deliberation, the farmers went to their own tent. Tamelia went into hers, and Malam took the one intended for Ripson. Jarl stirred the fire and gathered some branches and formed a small pile of firewood nearby. He sat down and stared off in the direction of the shrine, trying to discern its silhouette against the night sky. Ripson sat across from the young man and quietly meditated. Without conversation, time slipped through the flames and smoke and into the forest. The young man preoccupied himself the best he could, but each time he intended to say something to the monk, he stymied the urge upon seeing how deeply invested Ripson was in his meditative practice. Nothing upsetting came to pass as the time to change duties arrived. Jarl promptly went to the tent and woke up Tamelia without resistance. The two switched places. Hey, Tamelia reached and grabbed at Jarl. Yeah? Upon getting a hold of his clothing, she tugged softly. Let me use your cloak. Why? I gave Malam mine. Ah, that's right. Jarl unfastened his cloak and passed it to his friend. Thanks. She sloppily wrapped it around herself. You're welcome. I guess that Malco guard was wrong, huh? The one who told us that those attacks were nothing but rumors? Yeah. He clenched his hand to a fist. You don't think? Stop worrying. They're fine. Now, those two, they're probably down and rowing, waiting for winter to come and go. You're right. Tamelia shook her head assuringly. Thanks, and good night. Yep, good luck on the watch. Thanks. Tamelia departed the tent. Quickly, she realized she wasn't going to be able to hold any sort of conversation with the monk, So she preoccupied herself by gathering more firewood and sharpening her blade. To her relief, her portion of the watch breezed by without trouble. Then she woke up Dieter to finish the remainder of the night watch. After she slid into the tent, Dieter stirred the fire. He tied 3 sturdy branches together and stood them over the fire. With a second twine, he tied it into a handle of the pot and knotted it into the branches. As his thoughts emptied from his mind, he carefully pulled away the pot from the fire, all as one piece, and sat down next to the monk. Flames, licking the air, masked the whispered conversation between the two. You may be meditating, but I know you're listening. My mind has not changed on the matter. I am quite certain. Care to explain what you're certain about? No. Doesn't really help us much. It makes it easier without doing so. Dieter crossed his arms. If you say so. I find a helping hand tends to make the load lighter. Maybe if that hand is deft in purpose, but a fumbling one only makes the task far heavier. Fair enough. The farmer stood up and tidied the camp area while keeping an ear out for trouble. None came. He fed the fire one last time and watched the canvas of the sky above mix and bend with oranges and violets. After some time, he placed the soup-filled pot and his quickly fashioned tripod back over the fire and woke the others up shortly after. In groggy silence, the group ate the remainder of the soup. Once finished, they buried the dying embers under some dirt and gathered their gear. I am capable of carrying anything to help. Please do not think I am not strong enough. Let me help. Blom reached out his hands to each of the other members of the group, but they politely shook their heads, except for Ripson, who only glared in response. It's quite all right, Malam. Our journey has not been anywhere near as difficult as yours. Let your legs carry you. Once we get situated in Flodney, we can let you carry all you want. The corner of Josephine's eyes wrinkled deeply as she smiled. Okay, but in what order are we venturing there? The boy looked at them with a frown. I'll lead us. The monk patted himself on the chest. Dieter can take up the rear. The rest of you can figure it out from there. Without adding any more details, Ripson turned and began the trek west-southwest in the direction of the next destination, Flodney. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, that is the end of chapter 19. I don't think there was anything added. Yep, nope. So, yeah, that is that. There is another character who has joined the party. That is the character of Malam. So, come on, gracious. But yeah, that's the yeah, if you are familiar with beats and rhythms of JRPGs and games and such like that, you can see, oh, okay, all right, and then you probably have an idea of who the next character would be. And I'll get to that when that comes up. So, but yeah, that is that. It is a little bit of an excursion. And it's kind of the, how long until the shoe drops sort of thing is what's going on, right? It's kind of like, and that's the other thing too, right? Now there are doubts of things. Jaharl's very, very intent to a fault that, oh yeah, they're down probably in Rowan or Perel Castletown. They're just hanging there, and then the doubt of on Tamelia's side kind of has them going like, but he's trying to be reassuring. And how good is reassurance on something that you don't have any information on, that you don't have any control on? That's, I think, a question that should be something that people ask you. How good is that? How good is having, if it is something that is well beyond your control, is it good to try to mask that with, oh, things are fine and whatnot, or would it be better to perhaps not have the light shining bright on that, but focus it on something else that you do have control over, to be more of a hope cultivator, or somebody who tries to inspire hope, or what have you, into others. Personal philosophy, I would go with focus on the other things. Not to say ignore, but focus on these other things so that you can confront. But I know that's not quite how some people do that. But that is that. So thank you for listening, watching, what have you, popping in. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, even though it's almost to an end. Back to work soon. But that's okay, because we'll meet again Saturday. I don't have to work Saturday, so it'll be the 12th. And so, for example, chapters 18 and 19 were about 19 pages or so, 19, 20 pages. Chapter 20 is 24 pages. And then chapter 21 is 19 pages. So it'll probably be next week just chapter 20. And then from there, I don't know if there's any really other super heavy ones. I'm trying to think. I think those are the long, like, that's kind of the longest it gets. I mean, there's some that are like 19, 17 pages. But most of it is a little bit shorter. There's another really long one later on that's almost 20 pages, which isn't really that long. I don't know. That's kind of the way I like it. Like with Sudraba, a lot of it are shorter, and then the kind of the climax chapter is a really long chapter, for reasons other than just I'm a stooge. I have no idea what that was about, other than just laughing like an idiot. But sometimes you just need to laugh like an idiot. Yeah, so that's it. Enjoy your day, weekday, weeknight, weekend, everything in between. And I will catch you on the 12th. That was what I was initially starting with. This April 12th, Saturday. We'll be back to Saturday, April 12th, 10 a.m. So, see you then. Toodles.